I know from working at the community college, you haven't stopped thinking about what's going to happen if this does go through. We recently have heard from the Allied Health field and Kennebec Valley. Do you have any idea from each community college where they're going to go if this goes through as it is?
We have not yet started that process in any great detail, but you know, when we look to make adjustments in the $2 to $3 million range when we talk about, well, we're going to try to absorb 1.8 here or maybe pick up 2.1 here. So when you start to move in the area of 8 to 10, that's very real money that will have a very significant impact. And what we would do in that regard, what we've done in the past is we would look at our programs and services that you know, we could reduce, that would have the least impact on the number of students served.
Thank you.
Senator Valentino.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here today. Just three basic questions if you could get back to us at the work session. One, if flat funded, what the tuition will be. If we grant the 5% increase as stated in your letter, what would the tuition be? And how much money would we have to give you to make sure that the tuition does not increase?
Yes.
Thank you.
Representative Pouillon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Derek, don't let me forget too, there's a photo of you and I in the Kennebec Journal, the keynote after you spoke last week. I got to get you a copy.
My condolences for you.
Could you speak about your participation in the Bridge Year program and your current funding projections within the budget?
I understand only generally that the system is participating in the Bridge Year program, but I can't give you accurate and complete response beyond that, but I could give you that information.
Representative Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering if the work session would be possible to sort of get a rough estimate of what percentage of your budget goes to instruction, facilities, and administration.
Yes, I could do that.
Representative Rotundo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. I would just say we all recognize how critical the community college system is to the economic well-being of this state, and we look forward very much to getting the information back that members have requested this morning.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I regret that I'm not situated to provide you with the responses, but I'm not going to try to fake it.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair.
Maine Maritime Economy.
Senator Hamper, Senator Langley, Representative Rotundo, Representative Cornwell, and members of the Joint Standing Committees for Appropriations and Financial Affairs and Education and Cultural Affairs. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. My name is Bill Brennan, President of the Maine Maritime Academy. It was my pleasure last week to address the joint session with the State of the Academy report. It was my pleasure to be here today to speak in support of the recommended level of general fund support to the Maine Maritime Academy for the 2016-2017 biennium. Maine Maritime Academy is a small co-educational college located in Down East Maine and is today a unique part of the state's higher education partnership. The Academy specializes in marine-oriented education at the undergraduate and graduate levels, although our mission has evolved and is far broader today with a curriculum emphasizing engineering, management, science, and transportations. Students in many of our programs also receive specialized training, which prepares them for careers in the U.S. Merchant Marine or in the uniformed services of the United States. We are one of 6 such colleges in the country established pursuant to federal law in the 1940s. In many respects, Maine Maritime Academy is the state's original STEM institution, and again this year we have been listed by U.S. News and World Report as one of the top small undergraduate engineering schools in the country. Impressively, we have also been recognized by Money Magazine as the top public college in America and the 4th best college in the country for returning value on the higher education investment. I know that these are all achievements that you would take great pride in as well. If you were to visit our campus today, you would see our bridge simulator, which functions much as a flight simulator, and is dependent upon highly sophisticated computer and optical software to provide students with a very realistic training platform. This simulator is located in what once was a cafeteria. Our tanker simulator, a lab which trains our students in how to discharge safely cargoes like petroleum products, was built in the cellar of the old Eastern States Normal School classroom building. Our form of education requires ever-increasing technological advances to keep current with international training standards mandated by the United States Coast Guard, as well as with standards of our academic accreditation agencies, including the New England Association of Schools and Colleges and the Accreditation Board for Engineering and Technology. At one time, all of our buildings were constructed by the state. However, these days are long gone. Nevertheless, I am pleased to report that we continue to overcome difficult challenges, and just last month we opened the first classroom building built on our campus in over 30 years. 3/4 of the cost of that building was raised from private sources, and the people of Maine contributed through a bond support. Our accomplishments have come at some sacrifice due to financial and fiscal challenges facing all public educational institutions in the state during the past few years. While the Academy's general fund appropriations have remained relatively unchanged, our costs have continued to increase. Today, our general fund appropriation represents a little more than 20% of our operating costs, and yet the other state maritime academies that we compete with receive up to 58% of their operating revenue through state appropriations. Nevertheless, we appreciate that this budget proposal does reflect an increase in funds. While there are 4 initiatives represented here, they represent a modest change. This adjustment will make a significant difference in mitigating some of the impact of cost escalations and ultimately enable Maine students to enjoy both the intellectual and economic benefits of a Maine Maritime Academy education. Our enrollment is at record levels, and we are slightly beyond our maximum capacity. Although a challenge for us to administer, we are particularly mindful that this means more and more young Maine women and men will be able to benefit from one of the top undergraduate colleges of engineering in the country. Professional placement rates for our students remain very strong, with most choosing for multiple employment opportunities in their chosen fields upon graduation. I'm pleased to tell you that our placement rate is generally in excess of 90%, and that within 90 days, and some of those jobs pay our graduates in the range of 6-figure salaries right out of with a bachelor's degree. Maine Maritime Academy is a career-oriented institution. That is our mission, and I believe that we serve the people of Maine well. We operate in a very conservative fiscal fashion in an effort to attempt to keep our costs down such that any qualified Maine student who wants a Maine Maritime Academy education can afford to do so. I want to thank you for your time regarding the recommended biennial funding for the Academy. I'd be happy to answer any of the questions that you have at this time, including those that the committee posed previously or later in the committee work session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. Senator Keyes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Mr. President. With respect to the tuition, I was looking at the attachment here. There's in-state tuition and out-of-state tuition, but there's a middle ground there for New England Regional. Just curious, is that some sort of interstate compact, or how did that?
It's not analogous to the, for instance, the New England Regional School Program that I believe the university offers. This is something that is mandated under federal law that we make a certain number of our billets available for what are defined as regional students, and this reflects an artifact of the creation of these schools during the wartime effort. So that is a tuition differential that applies to those students that come from, in this case, Vermont, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. That would be applicable to our school.
Any other questions? You did answer a number over the back of the package, so good. Thank you.
Thank you all very much, and good luck.
Finance Authority, Maine.
Good morning, Senators Hamper, Langley, Representatives Rotundo, Cornfield, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committees on Appropriation and Financial Affairs and the Education and Cultural Affairs. My name is Bruce Wagner. I'm the CEO at the Finance Authority of Maine. I live in Cumberland. I'm here to testify in support of the governor's proposed higher education initiatives found on pages A245 through A247 of your printed materials. I first say that the Finance Authority exists to create good-paying jobs in the state of Maine. We do that two ways. One is through our economic development work, where we strive to create a vibrant economy that will help sustain this state. And the second is our educational mission, as we work to make sure that we have the skilled workforce needed to meet the demands of that growing economy. Today I'll be focusing on the educational elements of our budget. The first initiative is on page A245 of your materials, and that continues funding for the Educational Opportunity Tax Credit Marketing Fund, which is actually newly administered by FAME. The credit is designed to help cover repayment of student loans for eligible Maine students who work and pay taxes in the state after they graduate from higher education. And I think this is a very important initiative because it really connects funding to the result of having educated students stay and work here in the state. FAME was directed by the legislature to contract with a private nonprofit entity to help market the underutilized tax credit. And in August of last year, FAME entered into a $22,000 marketing agreement with Opportunity Maine to publicize the program. It's too early to give the results on that, but we're hoping that it gets a much higher level of utilization. The second initiative is on page A246 of your materials and concerns $237,740 for each biennial year for a Healthy Maine allocation to the Maine Dental Education Loan and Repayment Programs, which are administered at FAME. The Maine Dental and Education Loan and Repayment Programs provide need-based, forgivable loans to Maine residents pursuing postgraduate education in the dentistry and loan repayment for dentists providing services to underserved populations in Maine. The proposed initiative will allow for the selection of new participants in the program and provide continued funding for students needing loans and loan repayment as dentists practicing in underserved areas in Maine. FAME will be able to meet its commitment to existing participants as well as adding roughly 7 new participants. The third initiative relates to the Maine Area Health Education Centers, and that's found on page A246 of your printed materials. This initiative proposes funding at $110,000 in fiscal year 15 through 16, and again $110,000 in fiscal year 16 and 17. This is essentially pass-through money that FAME transfers to the University of New England, and that helps fund the rural health workforce development programs in the area health education centers located in Bangor, Farmington, and Prescott. It's a very important program. In fiscal year 2014, over 1,400 students in Maine's middle and high schools participated in pipeline activities. Most were from rural communities. 371 clinical rotations were arranged in Maine for medical, dental, nurse practitioner, physician assistant, and nursing students, and more than 2,000 healthcare professionals attended continuing education programs. The fourth and final initiative funds FAME's student financial assistance programs in the amount of $10,670,374 in each year of the biennium, with a notable and much appreciated increase of $5 million for the Maine State Grant Program in each year as well. The initiative may be found on page A247 of your printed materials. The programs funded through this line of the budget include the Maine State Grant Program, the Educators for Maine Program, the Maine Health Professionals Loan Program, and the Doctors for Maine's Future Scholarship Program. The centerpiece is the Maine State Grant Program, and that's used for basic need-based undergraduate grants. In recent years, we have awarded over 10,000 Maine students an average grant of $1,000 annually. We are excited by the governor's proposal for for increased funding and respectfully request that you support this increased level of funding. It will mean increasing the average award from $1,000 to $1,500 for qualifying state students. I note since the beginning of the program, we kept pace with inflation, from the original $1,000 grants, we would be at a level of $2,500. So $1,500 does go a long way towards closing that gap, and it's very important. The Educator for Maine program is a merit-based forgivable loan for Maine students pursuing initial certification as a teacher, including speech pathology or a career in early childhood education. Loans are forgiven if a student teaches or serves as a speech pathologist in an elementary or secondary school or quality child care program in Maine. The Health Professions Loan Program, also part of this line item budget, features a repayable loan for Maine residents pursuing postgraduate medical, dental, or veterinary education. The loan provides zero-based interest rate incentive to encourage recipients to practice primary care medicine or dentistry in underserved areas of Maine. We are grateful for the governor's funding proposal for famed student financial assistance programs and would appreciate your continued support of access to higher education in Maine. Thank you for this opportunity, and I would be very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions, Representative Lyon, or Senator Lyon?
Thank you, Representative Hamburg. We both served in the House, so long roads. Mr. Wagner, thanks for being here today. My question is about the Doctors for Maine's future. I was curious about how many students were involved in that. I had the real pleasure of meeting a young lady last Friday at the Fisherman's Forum who was at Tufts Medical, grew up in Maine on an island, was in the Doctors for Maine's Future program, who's looking to come back to Maine after she finishes, but as part of her work, she was doing surveys of fishermen and their access to health care. Had a tremendous conversation with her, and when I told her we were doing this week, she wanted me to personally thank the folks at FAME for that opportunity. But I'm curious how many students are involved.
We gave 34 grants last year.
Thank you.
Representative Flugo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple questions on the Opportunity Maine advertising. Can you speak a little bit about where that would be advertised, what could be areas of need? And I do have a second question too, Mr. Chair.
I know you will be hearing more about that in later testimony. I don't have the full details of where that will be done at this time, but I can follow up in the work session.
Okay, great. Thank you. So my second question was, I know you're working, hopefully it's okay to share this, internally on some student loan refinancing proposals. Currently, there's new money available through FAME for students, but it's not possible for them to get, student loan refinance. Can you speak a little bit about that, and then if that's in your budget at all?
It's not in this budget. It would be funded with resources that we have in FAME already, and that is an initiative to create a loan consolidation product that would at very low interest allow students to consolidate their loans at favorable rates, and that would be for both private and public funds, depending on whether that was the best thing to do for the student. We're working on that now, and it's going through our new product pipeline. We're hoping to have the product fully developed by May or June.
Senator Valentino?
Thank you very much. I had a question on the Doctors for Maine's Future Scholarship Program. It says it's for primary care. Is that, so that's exclusive to only doctors that are doing primary care? We heard a great need the other day for more physicians, actually not physicians, but more doctors for psychiatry in the state of Maine. Also we had a chart that not as many people were going into primary care, they're going into specialty care. And I'm just wondering if we're losing a target by narrowly defining it just to primary care would that include people that are going into different specialties, I guess, that I'm wondering, or is it just exclusive to somebody who sets a primary care practice up?
Let me just check with a colleague on that. It is just primary care right now where the shortage is. I do know only 13% of medical school graduates are going on to primary care, and the shift in how care is being delivered to be more proactive than reactive is really putting a greater focus on that. So that's where the program is targeted.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Millet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Wagner. I just first want to thank FAME for all it does to help our students get into college and support our workforce and ultimately support the economy of Maine. I spent a lot of time working with your colleagues this past summer and fall, and was appreciative before, but I'm doubly appreciative now of everything that goes on. And I would just take exception to the term greedy being utilized, because ultimately it just means more money for students, not necessarily for the organization itself. So the amount that's in the budget is $1,500, as you suggested, that the purchasing power to get back to 20 years ago would be $2,500.
That's right.
At that level, do you know if there's still a level of unmet need for most of Maine students in terms of affording college?
I can't quantify that. I think I'd like to come back to you on the work session for that. It's obviously going to depend on individual circumstances for the students. But my guess is that there's still some gap to be closed based on where we are nationally. We're 7th in affordability in the nation, with an average debt of around $30,000, and we really want to be able to close that gap and have college be far more affordable. But I'll come back to you with a more specific number in the work session.
Senator Siraki?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Wagner. I have a question about the dental education loan program, and it says that it sounds like it's geared for the underserved populations that the dentist is serving. I think Maine has 15 out of 16 counties are designated as federally underserved areas, so basically the whole state. Do you go by that as your benchmark to determine if they're in an underserved area or not, or how do you determine that?
I'm not an expert on how it's determined. Let me just check with my colleague. It's based on federal guidelines for how that's set and determined.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Hubble?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to follow up a little bit on Senator Millet's question, I also served on the Affordability Commission, so I echo compliments for your staff. One of the things that I remember from that, I believe I remember from that conversation, was that the level of unmet need for college students in Maine, in other words, the amount of money that fell short of the actual college expenses when all other avenues of financially exhausted doing work study and loans was typically as high as $4,000. So for the work session, I would like to have an understanding. I understand your gratitude for any increase in the state grant program, but at what point are we actually pretending to meet that need and we're actually not reaching a significant number of students?
Certainly any advance to help close that gap would be very, very helpful, and we're deeply appreciative of the 50% increase. I do think more funding would give us some flexibility and opportunity to do some very interesting things. For example, one of the things that has been under consideration is tiering payments. We're really focusing more and more on thinking about getting students to complete. So I may not be answering your question directly, but we're thinking that with additional funding that we would increase the amount of payments available as you progress towards graduation, with an eye on making sure that people do graduate.
Thank you. That does somewhat answer my question, but I'd be interested in your perspective on the need for that tiered payment system, because to me, it seems as if providing an incentive to finish college in the face of the structural gap in affordability, if we were really adequately addressing the affordability needs, then perhaps the tiered mechanism might not be necessary.
I think there's room for both. The tiered mechanism would provide more total money to the students to help with the affordability, and it just structured it in a way to really help drive them towards completion. And we know that default rates really skyrocket if you have not completed your education, get the full benefit from that. So it's just a different structuring in delivery. So even if the total amount was the same, I still think tiering to really give people the encouragement to finish is important.
Representative Scroggie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Wagner. One more question here. Regarding the Maine State grant, is that grant awarded to students that attend private schools as well as public?
Well,
So it's just need-based regardless
it's
of
need-based
what
based on
type?
expected family contribution.
Okay, so it's not limited to the Maine system or community college system or anything?
No.
It's open to
No,
all
it's public
students.
and private.
Thank you.
Any further? Not seeing it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maine Arts Commission, Julie Richards.
Good morning. Senators Hamper and Langley, Representatives Rotundo and Cornfield, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Appropriations and Financial Affairs and Education and Cultural Affairs. My name is Julie Richard, and I'm the Executive Director of the Maine Arts Commission, and I am here today to present testimony in support of those departmental items presented in the biennial budget. Part A, request for the Maine Arts Commission Administration Fund, may be found on page A104 of the committee copy. The Maine Arts Commission was established by the legislature in 1966 to encourage and stimulate public interest and participation in the cultural heritage and programs of our state, and to expand the state's cultural resources. We are governed by statutes. The agency works to advance the arts by supplying services and results-oriented funding to artists, arts organizations, communities, and schools, and helpful resources and information about arts and culture to the general public. The Maine Arts Commission looks for evidence that the public is a clear beneficiary, that available resources are being used efficiently, that additional resources are being leveraged to ensure success, sustainability, and commitment, and that the local capacity to carry on the work begun becomes greater as a result of those efforts. In addition to the administration and personnel services costs, this fund allows the Maine Arts Commission to provide grant support for artists, school districts, community organizations, and arts institutions through a variety of specialized grant programs serving Maine people statewide. Grants applied by the Maine Arts Commission to the state's creative workforce spur a match in fundraising, often from out-of-state sources. The figures from the last 3 years below show that in total, $1.4 million in grant funds encouraged matching revenues of an additional $5.5 million that supports countless jobs in Maine's industries and supply chains. And I'm not going to read those, you can read those for yourself. According to a 2011 study conducted by the New England Foundation for the Arts, Maine nonprofit arts and culture sector spending totaled $262 million by 2,292 organizations, which translates to more than 8,600 jobs. The total economic impact of the nonprofit arts and culture sector totaled approximately $525 million. In a 2014 study developed by Americans for the Arts, the creative industries in Maine, which is a combination of for-profits, nonprofits, and entrepreneurs, stated that there are 3,262 arts-related businesses generating 10,667 jobs, which translates to 3.9% of the total number of businesses in Maine and 1.6% of the total employment in the state. According to the Federal Bureau of Economic Analysis, arts and culture production accounted to $698 billion, or 4.32% of the nation's economy in 2012. This makes arts and culture's contribution to the GDP larger than construction, transportation, or tourism. Because economic impact information is so important to our state, we will be participating for the first time in Americans for the Arts Economic Prosperity 5 study that will take place over the next few years. And because we will be sponsoring this for the state, communities and regions around the state of Maine will be able to participate individually at a greatly reduced rate, creating an incentive for more of our cities, towns, and regions to be part of this study. We are hoping to have credible, accurate economic impact information upon completion of this report in 2017. The Maine Arts Commission also provides professional development opportunities to arts educators, artists, and arts administrators. Career development workshops are supplied throughout the state, focusing on topics such as grant writing, board development, marketing, legal matters, technology, implementation, and support for assisting artists and members of the public with disabilities. As part of our professional development work, we presented the first Maine International Conference on the Arts in 2013, with more than 350 in attendance over the 3 days of the conference. The conference featured 4 keynote speakers, 61 workshops ranging in topic from arts education to marketing to creative placemaking and more, and 3 performing arts showcases featuring 15 acts from around the state. The following is a spending history of the agency and key personnel. There are 2 budget initiatives for this program. The first is for funding to host the second Maine International Conference on the Arts in the amount of $70,000. The conference is tentatively scheduled for November 5th and 6th, 2015 at Point Lookout Resort in Northport. This conference will encourage cross-border participation by our New Brunswick partners and beyond. It will once again feature noted keynote speakers and professional development workshops to benefit the field at large. The second funding initiative is to implement our soon-to-be-released Cultural Strategic Plan. Since we have not yet received the results of our data gathering phase and have not yet developed the priorities for our state, I can only speculate on how these funds could be used. But I anticipate that we could hope to expand grants and other funding, implement additional data gathering, including economic impact information, and increase communications and awareness efforts, to name a few. For your information, we will be holding 3 cultural summits to reveal the data gathering results, to obtain feedback on March 17th in Portland, March 18th in Orono, and March 19th in Presque Isle, and I encourage you all to attend at least one of those. Part A request for the Maine Arts Commission General Grants Fund may be found on page A105 of the committee copy. The Maine Arts Commission receives federal funds through a partnership agreement with the National Endowment for the Arts. These funds are provided on the basis that the state match them 1-to-1. The federal funding distributed through our grants program supports artists, school districts, community organizations in development, arts organizations, the traditional arts, and creative aging. Last year, we completely revamped our grants program based on much feedback we had received from the field at large. Whittling down 14 grant programs to 5 categories for grants, we now offer project grants for organizations and individual artists and to support arts education, fellowships for individual artists, apprenticeships, and a new partnership category that offers organizations general operating support but requires them to achieve certain levels of professional standards. The partnership program in particular has received accolades from the field. We also offer a creative economy grant, and we are expanding that program next year into 2 phases to encourage communities to develop their own cultural plans prior to applying for the implementation grant. We also revamped the way we offer grants, once a year as opposed to several times a year, and the way we review them, which is now based on set criteria, a 7-point scale, and weighted ratings. This year we have given out 96 grants to 65 organizations and 28 artists totaling $502,100. We were able to fund about 41% of the total requests we received, leaving $717,000 worth of requests behind. This next year, we will be debuting our new grants website that will simplify the application and review process. There are no budget initiatives for this program. Part A request for the Maine Arts Commission sponsored program Federal Expenditures Fund may be found on page A106 of the committee copy. The Maine Arts Commission receives federal funds through a partnership agreement. I'm not going to repeat that because I said that already. Programs under this fund include Poetry Out Loud, This is a national poetry recitation project where students compete to participate in the national finals in Washington, D.C. This year, more than 10,000 students from around the state competed for the title, or will compete for the title because it isn't over yet. And this is the most number of students that we've ever had participate in this program. The state finals are actually Wednesday, March 11th at the Waterville Opera House. The winner in their school will receive a cash prize from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Poetry Foundation and a trip to DC to compete nationally. Traditional arts apprenticeships and project grants are supported by this fund. These grants have been critical in preserving Maine's unique cultures and traditions, including basket making, boat making, snowshoe making, and more. Our new creative aging program is also supported by this fund, which offers teaching artist training workshops, our new roster, and workshops for organizations to implement creative aging programs. Part of our work in this new program includes participation in the Aging Friendly Communities Task Force and participation in the National Communities of Practice program sponsored by the National Center for Creative Aging and the National Endowment for the Arts. Our arts learning grants are also supported by this fund that aim to strengthen and support arts education in our schools. Our most important arts education program is the Maine Arts Assessment Initiative, which is partially funded by this program. Now in its fourth phase, the Maine Arts Assessment Initiative was established in 2010. Arts educators are leading the way to strategic transformation in Maine schools, and they're doing it from the ground up. A standards-based, student-centered approach is the premise of the work. In 2018, Maine students are required to show proficiency to obtain a high school diploma, as you know, and the Maine Arts Assessment Initiative is committed to providing professional development to prepare teachers for this learning environment. The MAAI mission is to create an environment in Maine where quality assessment in arts education is an integral part of the work all arts educators do to deepen student learning in the arts. This program has been recognized nationally for its important impact on students and arts education. An additional $50,000 is needed to fully fund this program in each of fiscal year 16 and 17. Another arts education program that requires additional funding that has not been included in the biennial budget is the implementation